So what are the requirements for being an egg donor? If you're considering donating, you're probably wondering this. And if you're a hopeful parent, you may also be wondering, what do I need to be looking for? Well, if you've asked that question, I'm here to help you. I'm Corlandos Scott, and I'm an assisted reproduction attorney who's dedicated his entire practice to helping people grow their family through assisted reproductive technologies. Stick around and we'll talk about it. While there's no laws on exactly what must be in place to be an egg donor, we'll talk about some standards. So in this video, I'll cover some universal health standards that you want to consider. We'll look at how ethnic background plays a role in it, and I'll also talk about personal preferences. Let's jump right in. Like I said, there is no hard and fast law on who can and cannot donate eggs, but there are some things that are pretty standard. You'll notice that there are some variations from one donor agency to another donor agency, or from one egg bank to another egg bank, but there are some things that pretty much every professional agrees on. Let's look at some universal standards. Typically, agencies and banks look for donors who are under the age 35. And the sweet spot, I'd say, is between 21 and 30. Now, it doesn't mean you can't donate if you're over 35, but we're talking here about what type of donors agencies are looking to add to their databases. There's also the issue of physical and psychological health. Most agencies and most egg banks are going to want to know things like the donor's BMI. They're going to want to make sure that the donor doesn't have any kind of transmissible diseases. They're going to also want to make sure that she's psychologically prepared to undertake the process. So psychological health plays into it as well. And an additional universal health standard here is the genetic screening. So we want to make sure that we look at not only the donor's genetic history, but that of her family. After all, being an egg donor is principally sharing your genetics with another. So we want to make sure that there's no genetic abnormalities that could pose a potential problem to recipients. Now, there's some more universal standards. These aren't necessarily hard and fast science issues, but we want to look at the donor's lifestyle. We want donors to have no history of drug or substance abuse for sure. We also want to make sure that potential donors haven't had body piercings or tattoos in the last 6 to maybe even 12 months. And you may be asking, why in the world can't she have a tattoo? Well, it's not that we're against tattoos, but one of the issues with any kind of body piercing is the potential for transmitting infections. So you want to make sure that we don't run into that issue. And last but not least, we also look at travel. Of course, whenever you travel abroad or you travel internationally, there's the question of any kind of infections that you could have possibly picked up that aren't native to the country that you're in. So we're also going to look at the donor's travel in the past 6 to 12 months. Now, before I move on and talk about how ethnicity may play a role, do you have any questions? Has there been anything you've been wondering about with the egg donation process? If so, comment below. Let me know. I love to see what you guys are thinking. When we're talking about the requirements to be a donor, ethnicity isn't a requirement, of course, but it's something that's definitely considered. And there's two main reasons. The first reason is physical appearance. Many intended mothers and intended fathers as recipients want to choose a donor that resembles themselves. So often they will look for donors that share their physical characteristics. So you may be looking for a donor with dark hair, or light hair, or green eyes, or blue eyes. Of course, you don't have to choose a donor that resembles you, but that's often the case with a lot of recipients. The next reason that ethnicity may potentially play a role is that some illnesses and health issues have been linked to ethnic groups. So as a quick rundown, you have things like cystic fibrosis that has been found to occur more likely with people of Northern European ancestry. You have sickle cell anemia that has been found to occur in people of African, African American, and Middle Eastern descent. You have Tay-Sachs disease, which has been found to occur in people of Central and Eastern European Jewish heritage. And conditions like thalassemia that's been found in people of Mediterranean descent. The list goes on, but suffice it to say that sometimes ethnicity can play a role. So when you're looking at your donor, you do want to consider her ethnic heritage so that you can do a proper genetic screening to make sure that you don't run into any of these issues. Okay, let's be honest. I'm not a doctor and I don't even want to pretend to be one, but we've got to address one thing. You found your donor and it occurs that she's had a genetic disorder. Does that automatically rule her out? Well, the answer is no. you have to consult your medical professional, but several genetic disorders are carried through recessive genes. So that means that we want to make sure that whoever the sperm donor is isn't also a carrier of that same genetic disorder. If they're not, it's likely that you may be able to proceed with that donor. Again, consult your medical professional, but don't throw a donor out of your consideration simply because you found a genetic disorder in her recessive genes. So we can't finish a conversation about donor requirements without talking about what you as a recipient or intended parent want in a donor. So let's talk about recipients' personal preferences. One of the common preferences that I get when I'm working with a set of recipients or intended parents who are going through the donor process is, I want a donor who is whip smart. I want a very educated donor. So educational background plays a role in that. Many times you'll find that intended parents want a donor that has a certain level of education, be that college degree, graduate degree, or even professional degree. Now, although we have things like standardized testing and IQ tests, there is no one-size-fits-all with what makes a person intelligent or smart. So when we're talking about educational background, it's really going to boil down to what the intended parent considers well-educated and smart. The next thing we have on personal preferences is personality. Personality traits. So as an intended parent, one of the questions you want to ask in the matching process is, what is the donor's personality like? Is she an introvert or an extrovert? Is she responsible? Is she outgoing? Is she reserved? Is she a bookworm? Is she energetic? These are things that may factor into your decision. At the end of the day, when you're working with a donor, your child is going to share this person's genetic makeup. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with all facets of the person, the entire person, from personality to health characteristics. Now, before I let you go, a question that I also get from donors is, how many times can I donate? Again, there is no federal or state law on how many times a donor can donate at this point, but we do have guidelines. The American Society for Reproductive Medicine has advised that a donor donate no more than 6 times. So you'll have to consult with your doctor and look at your own specific situation, but use that as a guideline. Now, if you're a recipient or intended parent and you're thinking about the donor process, you may also be considering the surrogacy process. If you are, well, you're in luck because I have something just for you. It's called my 3 T's of Surrogacy. And the 3 T's of Surrogacy is a training where I walk you through the 3 steps to have a successful surrogacy process without losing sleep, time, or money. And if you click the link below, you can get access to that free training right now.